It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie. With the Honda Civic Diesel, the cleanest and most efficient Honda Civic ever, with Honda Sensing as standard. Visit Honda.ie.
Yes, Brent Pope's here between now and 7 o'clock, Rugby Live 5. We will be talking a little bit of rugby. We will be talking about population bias, I'm going to call it. We'll be talking about mistaken identity, and we'll be talking about Bernard Brogan, amongst other things. Yes, there will be some rugby in there at some point, and I have a little present for Brent too. He doesn't know he's going to get it.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
Can I see some ID, please, by the way? I understand you're mistaken. You're mistaken for somebody quite well known.
I'm mistaken for lots of people that are well known. For years, it used to be a boxer from Terenure who I never met called, I think, Mel Crystal or something, the Crystal Brothers. That's when I first arrived over to Ireland, maybe 30 years ago nearly. Then for years, it was Charlie Redmond.
Oh, yeah,
GAA,
you look a bit alike.
because of the cheeks.
Yeah.
And then it was this man, Johnny Logan. Two of us, on numerous occasions. So anyway, yesterday, right, I'm out in Carton House where the Irish rugby team are usually based, and there's a woman out with her husband walking a dog, and they come past me and she looks at me and says, "Joe, I'm so sorry or something, but, good luck to you," something like that. And the husband looks at her with disgust and shakes his head and said, "For God's sake," he said, "it's not Joe Schmidge." He said, "It's Warren Gatlin, the Welsh coach." I thought, Jesus Christ. Don't. I said, what Warren Gatlin would be doing at Carton House 2 days before a semi-final with Wales surprises me, but I just thought, I can see the resemblance between myself and Warren Gatlin, the grey hair and the kind of chubby chipmunk cheek face, but Joe Schmidt, I don't see it. No. Johnny Logan, yeah.
Well, these days, if you'll allow me.
What do you mean these days?
Sorry, okay, yeah.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
Pat Courtney with Brent Pope every Thursday night. What? Every time I say his name, Brent.
That's because I want
Brent
people
Pope.
to know that I'm here. I've made the effort. I've come over here on my bike. It's raining. Come to see you, Pat, and share 2 hours.
There's a bonus
Of great radio,
there
which is a rarity for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Brent. Yeah, if indeed it is Brent. We were talking before about Brent gets a case of mistaken identity.
And what about you? And I was asking you, have you been mistaken for anybody?
Yes. It was funny. I must get it from my dad because,
male.
Years. Oh, you're
a
male.
man. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, was a bloke. Yes. But my dad, back in his younger days, he used to get picked up by the cops for everything because he answered every description: average height, dark hair, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But me, I have been on 2 occasions. I've been mistaken for Lord Henry Mount Charles.
Well, you're serious, but he's a lot older than you too.
He's older and he's much taller.
Yeah.
But there were 2 occasions. One time, I remember I was going to work or something. I was going into town anyway. And it was in the morning, like 10, something like this. And this guy was still in the remains of a dress suit, with the bow tie kind of half askew and the white shirt, slightly not as white as it had been. He was coming home from some big flash do. Yeah. So admittedly, he couldn't see quite straight, but this was the first time I was mistaken. And he lurched up to me there outside, I think the National Concert Hall. And he lurched up to me and he said, "Oh, Lord Henry." Well, I thought he was going to bow and scrape and bang his forehead on the footpath, Brent.
And did you go along with it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the easiest thing to do sometimes.
All one does is posh up the voice just a little bit, and it sort of works. As long as it doesn't come out like, Prince Charles rather than Lord Henry Mount Charles. But the other time I was mistaken for Mount Charles, I went to which Slane was it? I can't remember, but Black Star Riders were playing anyway. And Henry had just launched his new whiskey. So there's the Lord Henry whiskey tent, you see. So I went in there and I thought I'll try some of the sponsors' fine product. And this Southside chap came up to me and he was all over me. "Lord Henry." And he's putting his hand out to shake my hand and everything. Well, I couldn't put my royal hand in my pocket.
Oh, that was brilliant. That's when it worked.
Well, it worked, yeah, it worked a treat. The poor leader of the opposition had to pour me home. But
if there's anybody out there that's been mistaken for Jennifer Aniston, can they please call in?
You get mistaken, I think it's probably as soon as you open your mouth. You get mistaken, you were mistaken the other day for Joe Schmidt. And speaking of Joe Schmidt, I felt so sad for him, Brent, at the end of that match last Saturday. He looked small. He looked smaller than he is, and he looked crushed.
No, and people make the point that he's Joe has aged a bit under the pressure in the last year, but that's pressure. Look, I know some members, people out there were saying the media were very cruel. Some were. I'm not about to bag what the achievements Joe Schmidt has brought to this country as far as rugby is concerned. His record speaks for itself. Heineken Cups with Leinster, then moving into the Irish team, making them one of the forces of world rugby, and not your national game. That's what people don't realise. GAA is your national game here. It's not rugby. So to get to be ranked, albeit for a short enough time, number one side in the world, to beat the All Blacks twice, to go on tours the Southern Hemisphere, wow, what a record. For it to finish like that, unfortunately for him, it's hard to know as a coach when you go out at the top, because it's hard to know when that time is going to be. I mean, he did put a lot of eggs into this World Cup basket. We all had expectations that Ireland would go to the semi-final or final. I even thought there was a time that they could have won it. And,
you did genuinely.
That was hard.
As well.
It was hard for me too. I've been following rugby, and I've been following Joe Schmidt's career, all the top players' careers for the last nearly 30 years, and I thought this was going to be the year that they were going to do something. So, yes, I did feel sorry for him, because there'll always be that. Players have visions, and they visualise things, and his visions was coming back to a ticker tape parade down in Dublin with people hanging out of buildings and, confetti and all that, and that's taken away, and it'll be hard for him to deal with for a while, but we wish him the best of luck, as Roy Best as well, and just appreciate what they've brought to the game.
Absolutely.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and nova.ie.
Pat Courtney.
I know that's going to annoy you. That's what I'm doing.
No, it's great. Brought to us by the Honda Civic. This is Honda Sensing as standard. Honda.ie will sort it out for you. Now, this arrived for you during the week. I came in I went to my desk in the departure lounge, and this was sitting up on my keyboard. I haven't opened it, but I did that thing that girls do. You know the thing that the ladies do, Brent, when you get an envelope and they'll peer at it, they hold it up to the light, look at it from every angle, and they're gone to the leader of the opposition. Why don't you open the bloody thing? But now, what does it say? It's a card. What does it say, Brent?
Oh, it's lovely.
Oh.
To the man who goes the extra mile for so many people, from one of your many fans, kiss, kiss.
Ah.
Yeah.
Who's it from?
Don't know. They didn't say. Just got sparkle. Thank you very much. That's lovely.
So you're going to go to this gallery opening tonight covered in glitter?
That's nice. Because I do feel I do like to give back. I do. So that's a lovely thing to say. So thank you very much for sending that card.
You bring that with you.
I'm going to bring it with me.
Whoever it was isn't sure about the birthday, because you're January, aren't you?
No.
When are you?
Next week.
You are next week.
Next
week. Because you and I are roughly the same.
October 27th.
That's right, because I'm Halloween.
Yes, I know that, but when's your birthday?
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and nova.ie.
Thank you. Thank you to the Honda Civic with Honda Sensing as standard. Good song, Red Right Hand.
It was a good song.
The soundtrack is out, by the way. The soundtrack of Peaky Blinders. It's quite huge.
And he's on it, is he, Nick Kay?
Of course he is, yeah. Because it's the theme. He's there. Radiohead is on it. David Bowie, that you've met. Arctic Monkeys. Richard Hawley. White Stripes. Joy Division. Black Sabbath. It's a massive thing. It fills up 3 discs. And he's on it because that there is the theme.
Good, I like it.
Yeah,
I wouldn't be a huge Nick Cave fan, I'd have to say. It's an acquired taste, but I like that song. You're playing some good music tonight, Pat, which is...
Thanks, Brent.
Yes, unusual. That's not unusual. No. Anyway,
Brent. Anyway, look, for people that aren't particularly into the rugby, okay?
Which there are many.
Well, of course. But I want to talk to you about that after as well, because I think there are going to be a lot of Kiwis in Ireland, on this weekend who won't be after the match. But anyway... Here's one here, right? For people that don't really get it, this is what I'm going to call rugby for dummies.
Yeah.
Okay? It all started with this. I got Guten Tag. I am in Cork for a few weeks, and everyone is watching the Rugby World Cup. Can you explain the rules? Okay. Carl from Berlin. Now, I gave this question to a chap I know who knows nothing about rugby or much sport at all, for that matter, and he can't see what all the fuss is about. So I asked him to have a look at a match, or part thereof, and explain the rules. And this is what he came up with, right?
Yeah.
He said, in rugby, the fat guys all crash into each other, while the slightly slimmer guys all stand in a line watching them. When the fat guys get tired, they all lie down on top of each other. When the ball comes out the back of this lie down, the skinnier guys kick it back and forth to each other for 10 minutes or so. Then the fat guys wake up and start running into each other again. Every so often the referee stops the game when someone drops the ball, because that is the only thing you're not allowed to do in rugby, drop the ball. Everything else seems to be okay. My mate goes on, says sometimes one group of fat guys pushes the other group of fat guys over the line and there is some manly hugging, but nobody gets the shift, unlike soccer. Then he finished up, he said after 80 minutes they add up the score and New Zealand wins. And that is Rugby for Dummies.
That's pretty good.
According to my mate Jerry.
That's pretty good.
There you go. I have a stupid question.
Yeah, again.
One of my stupid questions. I'll ask you that after Bon Jovi.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
Radio Nova Rugby Live at 5 with Pat Courtney and Brent Pope.
Yes!
Thanks to the Honda Civic Petrol with Honda Sensing, a standard at Honda.ie. We were talking earlier on, I'm dropping the stupid question, I have a better thing for you. We were talking earlier on about Brent gets mistaken for various people. Johnny Logan, Warren Gatland, which I can kind of understand, Joe Schmidt, somebody should have gone to Specsavers, and me, I've been mistaken for Lord Henry Mountcharles a couple of times. Brent said before, anybody who's ever been mistaken for Jennifer Aniston, would you give us a call on 440400? Well, Catherine actually texted me and she says, my left foot has often been mistaken for Jennifer Aniston. So she's obviously, she's putting her left foot in the door for you, Brent.
That'll do.
Listen to me. The Bowden brothers.
Yep.
Sorry, the Barrett brothers. Bowden Barrett, Scott and Geordie Barrett. Absolute rock stars in the All Blacks team. Yeah, their grandfather has died. Now, with their family background, that would be a massive blow. It will be a huge event. What we'd say a wake will possibly go on for a couple of days, and they've decided they're not going to go back.
No, because I think that Bowden spoke about it last week, and you could see that he was starting to get very tearful and looking up to the dedicated the win against Ireland to their grandfather. They're obviously very close. That would be the way that I know the Barrett's father well, Smiley Barrett. I played against him a number of times. I've met him a good few times. Great bloke. Unbeknown to a lot of people, they actually spent a couple of years over here in Westmeath when the boys were younger, farming.
Could we not have kept them?
That's what I mean. Look at them coming. But yes, I think that'd be a situation. Their grandfather loved rugby. He loved following them around the matches, so they'd be dedicating this match to him. So it'll only that will fire them. And I wonder if that's got anything to do with the kind of rumours coming out around the camp this week, the All Black camp, that in fact the Barrett will play in the forwards, not Bowden.
No, he's too small.
Will play in the forwards at blindside flanker. I thought it would have something to do with the fact that he's got more grunters in next second row, and he need that against England's power game. But it may well be to do with that they're going to dedicate this, hopefully, this win to their beloved granddad. And it's what a lovely thing to do.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
It's interesting, Brent. Last week on Saturday, an Australian friend of mine sent me a message. He said, in a matter of minutes, because it's Ireland playing New Zealand, he says, in a matter of minutes, the whole population of Australia will become Irish. Now, I think that on Saturday morning, a large chunk of Ireland will become Kiwis for at least a couple of hours. Do you realise that on last Saturday, out of 4.88 million people in this country, 1 million people tuned in to that match. 1 million.
I know.
In a country that... Like
exactly, but it's not your national
oval
sport.
Ball is something that fellas have.
Fantastic. When I first started here, Pat, doing rugby commentary on the television, you might have got audience of a few thousand. You know, so that's how much the game has grown. Now it won't be a national game, and rightly so, the GA is. But you know, it's come a long way. But I'd like to think that, and I think more so because New Zealand have there's a lot of crossover between New Zealand and Ireland, as you know,
massive culturally and all.
Yes, the culturally as well, and the fact that if you're Caucasian in New Zealand, there's probably a third of a chance that you came from Ireland, like my ancestors came from Ireland, and a lot of people I know. So, and the fact that it's always easier to accept you were beaten by the eventual winner. It's always easy to go back.
That's a good point. Yeah,
Psychologics always goes back and say, well, we met New Zealand, at the quarterfinal stage, unfortunately, and, if they go on to beat England and they go on to win it, you can say, well, okay, look, there's some amount of thinking there that, okay, you met the best team in the world at too early a stage. But, I hope also, we've been both here a long time. You'd like to think that people support us as much as we support Ireland. I mean, I've always been in Ireland's backyard. I've always wanted them to do well. I wanted them, it didn't worry me that they might have won last week. It wouldn't have worried me. I'd have been happy for the Irish support. I was happy in Chicago when Ireland beat the All Blacks.
Yeah. But also given the particular opposition this weekend. Jim rang in for you earlier on, Brent. This is what he had to ask you.
Good evening, Brent. Good evening, Pat. Just a couple of points on last week's game that you might be able to help me out with. First point is, would there have been any significance with Joe Smith announcing his departure from the Irish team earlier this year? Would it have any effect on the players? Number two, in his post-match interview, he referred to the Six Nations, that he was experimenting in it. I think maybe in hindsight that would have been a mistake. I think Six Nations is very important championship, and that if he gone flat out for the Six Nations and might have set a template for the year ahead. What would you think?
Yeah, two really good points. On the first point, I think that's been sort of raked over the coals. I think that, at the end of the day, Joe Schmidt had to do what he thought was best, and what he thought was best was announcing it the year before. I don't think it ever works out, to be honest, Jim. I think that I've played in a lot of successful teams where the coach has announced that's driven you to that success, that he is leaving. There's always a bit of a lull. So, we can look back and say, was that had anything to do with Ireland's performance in the World Cup? Probably a little bit. It can also work in your favour, because players that might feel that they've been left out under the current coach might feel that they get a look in under a new coach. So it can work both ways. I just think in this situation, it possibly just stripped a bit of confidence away. On the second question, yes, I don't know whether Ireland did experiment that much. That's probably the point. I think that, possibly they should have experimented a bit more. I think after that drubbing they received against England in the very first game, if you remember, I think that sent a sort of reverberations of shock around the Irish team, because they were bullied that particular day. I think they probably had to realise then that in one game, unfortunately, the Grand Slam was gone, the Triple Crown was gone, probably the championship was gone. So possibly we could have seen a bit more experimentation in the terms of players used over that Six Nations. But I think you're right. Six Nations is very important, and it's proven to be more important because of Ireland's, I suppose, inability, whatever, to get out of the into the top four of the world game. So the Six Nations becomes, I suppose, the pivotal. The pivotal point for Irish rugby to show where it's at in relation to the Northern Hemisphere game.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
Rugby Live at 5 on Radio Nova with Pat Courtney and Brent Pope. Every Thursday night, 5 to 7, as long as the World Cup keeps us entertained. And yes, it is still entertaining. Thanks to the Honda Civic Petrol with Honda Sensing as standard, Honda.ie. Okay, I have a stupid question.
Yeah. Again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do the reserves train with the starting team?
Absolutely.
They do?
Yeah, because it's now a 23-man game, Pat. It's not... professional teams now, they actually don't look at it as a 15-man game. I mean, Steve Hansen talked about having a double punch, which meant that Cody Taylor, the hooker who's usually on the replacements bench, would start against Ireland, and then the double punch would be Coles coming on in the second half to end the match or something. So you can actually pick impact subs. You can pick players that are going to come on and make a difference in certain parts of the game. So that's why they talk about a 23-man squad, and rightly so. So yes, absolutely, they train, do all the trainings, In fact, the only time they'll train differently is you'll see some of them out doing their fitness training, which they hate, by the way, after a match. You'll see the players that haven't had any game time, and different coaches allow special amount of game time. If you've played 20 minutes or something, you might get away with out having to do your sprints after the game. You see them at the Aviva.
It's a reward.
Yeah. Do you go to the Aviva? Well, some coaches, if you go to the Aviva, you'll see all the subs or the players that haven't had much game time out after the match when the others are going in and having their showers or whatever. Right. They'll be out there doing their conditioning work. It's just always the way it's been. I don't know if it's more psychological than physical.
That's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, more psychological, that you've got to do something on game day.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
Got a shock today. I was talking earlier on to a friend of mine. He says, Bernard Brogan's departing, finished with the Dubs. I went, what? Because I hadn't been listening to the news. Here was Bernard earlier on.
Obviously injured last year. Can I compete? Can I be up there with the level likes of Mannion and Con and these lads and Dino, and who are sensational footballers, and the rest of the lads are there. But that Saturday I felt I was toe to toe with them.
Bernard Brogan, Brent.
Yeah, I know Bernard well.
Do you know him well, do you?
Yeah.
Won 7 All-Irelands, 4 All-Stars, 13 Leinster medals, Footballer of the Year in 2010, not to mention Man of the Match with both goals against Mayo in 2013. You know Bernard well. How do you think he's going to cope with this withdrawal from something he's been so immersed in?
Absolutely. Part of his identity, that's the problem. And I mean, say, working as a psychotherapist now, that it's the very problem that a lot of clients present with. Look, the sporting world is documented with, especially players in professional ranks, not handling it very well. Suddenly you can be playing in front of 60 or 70,000 people and being adored in everyday life. Suddenly that's taken away from you, and suddenly, like, he'll always be a legend in the game, but, rugby players talk about suddenly having to go down and buy tickets for matches. Years ago they would have just walked into the ground or whatever. So it's that adoration. And interesting enough, I met a ballerina out in New Zealand. I know you say interesting enough. Of course you did. But she was a bit older, and she said the same thing to me. She said, Brent, when you finish up on TV or something at a stage, which I will, probably sooner than later, but, when that happens, how will you feel about it? And I said, that's an interesting question. She said, I was a ballerina around the world, and she said, I was used to being adored and roses up left after the end of performance, standing ovation. She said, when that was taken away from me, she said, it took about 4 years for me to realise that I wasn't that person anymore. And Bernard's been so wrapped up, as the whole Brogan family have been in GAA history. Having said that, it's an amateur game, but it's professional in more ways than no. We know that. The way they train, the way they dedicate their time to it, trainings every night a week. Suddenly you've got to go back to normality. And for players in that regard, suddenly they don't have all their travel arrangements. They're going back to like they were more or less teenagers trying to book. I know rugby players that have been brought up professional rugby players. They can't book holidays or anything, or they don't know how to cook or anything like that, because everything's been done for them. Bernard's in a bit of a different situation, because I know he works in pep talk and that, and they have a business around motivation and mental health and everything, so he's better equipped than most. But it's a very difficult. I think it all comes down to the word identity. Is your identity wrapped up? Is that who you are or who you believe you are? A GAA all-star or a great rugby player or anything like that. And if your identity's wrapped up in it, it's very difficult to let that go. Look at the amount, Paul Gascoigne's and all these guys. There's literally a list of English football players who have suddenly come out of a situation where suddenly they've got to go to work for a bob, or they've got to do things in their life that they're not regimented. Yeah. Everything, this is what you're told to do, a bit like being in the army, but become institutionalised, for want of a better word. He'll do okay, Bernard, because he's got all the I suppose the things in place for him to handle that pretty well. But he'll miss it.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie. Nova Noise. Name the noise. Win the cash.
2.1 kilo quid for this. Sounds like nothing, doesn't it? Well, what does it sound like to you? 4404100. Hello, Nova.
Hello, how are you?
Who's this?
This is Madison.
Madison, this is Pat.
Good name.
Hi, nice to meet you.
And this is Brent Pope, my friend.
I like
Brent
that name, Madison. Madison. That's cool.
Madison. Isn't that...
Where are you from, Madison?
I'm originally from Canada, but I live in Maynooth.
It's a long way from Canada as Maynooth. At least you have a cool name, Madison. Not a name like Pat. Yeah.
Well, thanks. I'll tell my parents.
At least when someone calls my name in the pub, you get the attention of half the room, Brent.
At least you're not called Bent Pipe like I was on a rugby field one time.
You were not Bent Pipe.
On a loudspeaker in front of about 50,000 people, and onto the field comes Bent Pipe. But geez, can't even get my damn name right. You know.
Oh, dear.
Again, it's the parents.
Exactly.
It is, yeah, it is. Yeah. I met a fella when I was on holiday in France. This guy's girlfriend has a daughter called Ebony Wood.
Ebony Wood. But I think, is everybody the same? I don't know whether it was school days, but you always used to be paranoid when somebody would call out your name, you know, through the intercom or something. Oh, you just used to cringe.
Yeah.
I hated my name. I hated, you know, like I always wanted a sporting name like Madison. There was a friend of mine played rugby and his name was Ray Falcon. It just sounded good. Onto the field comes big Ray Falcon.
Ray Falcon.
Sounds like something out of sort of superheroes, doesn't it?
Sounds
Ray
like an
Falcon.
American name.
It does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Instead of Brent Pope. Oh.
In fact, like Ray
Boring.
Falcon. It actually sounds like one of those cabaret singers who was never very good and now sings in the lobby of a hotel on Tenerife or something.
Anyway, so let's just give Madison the money.
Movie.
She's going to get it right. I have a good feeling
Madison,
about
what
Madison.
What is this Nova Noise?
Madison Avenue. Come on.
Madison Avenue. Actually, it's Madison after a mermaid, but thank you.
Oh.
I think the Nova Noise might be a hole punch. I haven't seen that answer.
You haven't seen that answer. I've lost count of the number of
it.
times I've actually heard it, Madison.
Really?
Oh,
it's not on the website then.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes,
put it on the
is.
website.
Yes, it is on the website.
I love
It has to
That's
be.
so
If it
sad.
isn't at this stage, after all these weeks, assistant heads will roll. Listen, it was good talking with you. Stay in touch.
Stay in touch,
Thanks,
Madison.
best of luck,
All right.
lads.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Hello, Nova. Pat speaking. Who's this?
Hello?
Yeah, you just stop ringing on the other phone. You're cheating. Listen to this, Brent. He's cheating.
And rightly so.
What do you mean?
They've got to cheat.
Oh, God, you're a...
Cheat to win. Cheat to
No,
win.
that's my friend ringing on the other phone. We work together.
Yo, it's tag teaming. Okay, who is this?
James is my name.
James, what's that Nova Noise?
Come
I
on,
think
James.
it's an ink cartridge being loaded into a printer.
Again. Yeah.
They don't want to give the prize away, James. I'm telling you.
We don't need
They
to
don't-
as long as people keep coming
They
up with
don't
the
want to
same
give it
stuff.
away.
Hello, Nova.
Hiya, Pat, it's Lennon.
Oh, Lennon? Oh, God. People are,
Great
people are
names
gonna
tonight.
People are going to call this a fix. Are you ringing for the Nova Noise?
I am.
Everybody knows Lennon's a friend of mine. Lennon, what age are you now? 12, 13?
I am. Well, I'm going 13 in December.
13
Good
December.
name too, though, Lennon.
Oh,
Great names
Lennon's an ace guitarist.
tonight. Yeah.
Ace guitarist. He and I jammed on the radio one day. What did we do? Comfortably Numb.
Come to me, numb, and then I came in the second time and not far and right.
Oh, that's cool. I'd love to play the
he's
guitar.
Good, man. He's good. He's the lead
Is
guitar.
Pat any good though, Lennon? Come on, be honest.
Did you
be
hear
honest.
the silence there? Is it?
Yeah.
God,
No,
what-
be
what do
honest.
I say
because,
now?
we can't give you the prize if you're not being honest here. So, is Pat any out of 1 to 10 on guitar scales? What would Pat be? Be honest.
Okay,
Solid
anyway,
nine.
the Nova Noise. Now, come on.
You got a 5. It's all right.
Did I get a 5? Oh, I got a pass mark. Oh, great. Lennon, what is this Nova Noise?
Is it someone pulling over blinds?
Is it something, pulling up blinds?
Pulling, like, over blinds, yeah.
Oh, I see what you mean. Drawing the blind. Yeah, no.
Hard luck, Lennon.
All right. Hey,
Keep
listen.
playing, mate. Keep picking.
Yeah, keep picking. Absolutely. Good talking to you. Talk to you soon, all right? Say hello to your dad for me. Okay.
Say hello to your dad.
Yeah, Jeff is his dad. Anyway, there we go. Tomorrow morning, 2000.
Running a competition, saying, say hello to your dad
I
for me.
know,
Oh, by the way.
I know, but I mean, you saw me take the call.
Oh, that's a first, I tell you.
You couldn't get it there.
Yeah, say hello to your dad and mum there. Thanks for entering the competition. I'll go your halves.
Not like that. You
I
say-
know, it's not, I know.
Anyway, what date is today, Brent?
What day is it?
No, what date? Oh, it's 20. Yeah,
Well, we should know because it's a few days for my birthday.
Oh God! If that wasn't a hint. Colin and Lucy will kick it off at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.
It's not their birthdays, is it?
You are?
It's not their birthdays.
No,
either,
it's the next time they do the
Did I tell you
noise.
it's my birthday coming up? Did I?
Yes, you did, Brent. You did
Just in
mention
case.
that.
I got one card.
6 times. Anyway, I'm just going to give up now.
Give up.
Here's the Nova noise.
It's the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney from Radio Nova and Nova.ie.
Okay, I kind of hate asking this question, and I cringe, but I'm going to. I cringe every time someone on, telly or radio, doesn't make any difference, asks the question, what's going to happen on Saturday?
Yeah, because you don't know. It's the hardest thing for being a pundit, because you don't know. Look what happened last week. We were here last week thinking that Ireland would put up a great fight and could maybe win the game, and the opposite occurred. Not saying they didn't try, it just it didn't go their way, obviously. But this week, look, I think I think New Zealand have gone away, even since that game against Ireland, since their Northern Hemisphere tours over the last couple of years, and said, look, how do we get around a power game? England probably, along with South Africa, have the topmost power games, if you want to call it that, in the world. England, through the Vunipola brothers and Tuilagi, play that sort of way. I think New Zealand just have that worked out at the way they're playing. That's not to say that England don't have a super team. They do. I just think that New Zealand might just be a bit slick for them. We're going back into an All Black side, by the way, that hasn't lost a World Cup match in 12 years. That's a pretty good record. So I see this as being the final, actually, but it's now been pushed to the semi-final because of the different permutations. But I just think New Zealand have a bit too much creative flair for England at this stage. I could be wrong, obviously, and there'll be a lot of English people out there listening that obviously want me to be wrong. It'll be a close game. It'll be a tight game played with two different styles of rugby, but I think New Zealand prevail. The other semi-final, I think, slightly easier to call, unfortunately, for my lookalike Warren Gatland. I think Wales have gone to the well too many times. They look tired. They've got a good win over France just to make it to this far, but they're losing a lot of players. Liam Williams is in doubt now. They've had other players sent back because of injury, and they just looked very leg heavy. South Africa have had an easy route through when you look at it, apart from the first match against New Zealand. Had to play Japan. Yes, it was an emotional win in that. Then, I suppose had to play possibly Wales to get to the final. An easier side of the draw. So I think it'll be a New Zealand-South African final.
See you next week.
See you next week, bro.
This has been the Rugby World Cup Live at 5 podcast with Brent Pope and Pat Courtney, with the dynamic and engaging Honda Civic Petrol with Honda Sensing as standard. Visit honda.ie. Join us next week for another podcast, or catch the show live Thursdays at 5 on Radio Nova and Nova.ie.